moving quite along, and we are right on time. I'm actually moving into the next session. I am joined by two individuals who are locally here in the Bay Area, and I would assume that we have some other people online. So welcome you all to the next panel. It's Generative AI Use Cases and Impact for Enterprises, with a big subtitle called How to Create Significant Value by Automating Complex Tasks, Reduce Costs, and Improve Efficiency in areas like drug development, chip design, material science, and other industry verticals. This is a wide area of segments to cover, and I'm pleased to have 5 experienced executives from Fortune 500 companies representing, in no particular order, Cisco, AWS, which is Amazon, Qualcomm, SAP, and Oracle with me to explore. Maybe we start by giving each individual around roughly 3 minutes to share your backgrounds and expertise around artificial intelligence and or Web3 as well, if it's appropriate. So let me start with JP Vasur, PhD. He is he's at Cisco and he's an engineering fellow. Please, JP, the stage is yours, and I see you popping up on the screen. Welcome.
Thank you, Thomas. Can you hear me? I guess so.
Loud and clear. Yes, loud and clear. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have a sort of an echo, so you know. But so I'm JP. I'm a Cisco fellow. I've been at Cisco for 25 years. So if you don't know Cisco, we are the largest provider in terms of networking, equipment, and we work also on security and collaboration as well. So I've been driving machine learning AI at Cisco for about 12 years now. We've been having an amazing journey. I'm super excited to be with you guys today, and this is more about generative AI. We have a lot to say.
Great. Thank you, JP. This was very insightful. Moving right along, next up, I like to invite Dr. Vinesh Sukumar. He's a Senior Director and Head of AI and Machine Learning Product Management at Qualcomm. Thanks for joining us today and being here present in the studio with us. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Thomas, for the generous introduction. For folks who don't know me, I lead the AI product team at Qualcomm, where I have the opportunity and privilege to look at and envision probably big ideas, and working with some fantastic colleagues of mine, translate that vision statement into reality. And we look at enabling, give or take, approximately 200 to 250 applications every given year, spread across from handsets all the way to complex domain like automotive devices. That includes, not to mention, common bread and butter use cases around detection, segmentation, classification, scaling, and most recently, complex domains like generative AI around LLMs, LVMs, getting into ADAS markets like L4, L5, full autonomy using AI. And it's a privilege being part of this panel today.
Thank you very much, Vinesh, for sharing your experience. Next up, I like to invite Raghu Banda. He is the Senior Director, Artificial Intelligence Product Management at SAP Labs here in Palo Alto, actually. So welcome to the group and welcome to the studio.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be part of this panel here. My name is Raghu Banda. I've been with SAP for a little over 2 decades, 20 plus years. I've been in different roles with SAP, starting with the development organization, and later on wanted to understand how the customers and the partners are using the products. And so I've moved into the implementations team for a few years. Later on, I've been with the product marketing and product solutions marketing for a couple of years. And then maybe for the last 10 years, I've been in the product management space. And that was a time when SAP started the journey into AI and ML. So I was fortunate enough to be part of this journey, and I lead the AI and ML initiatives in the product management space for our cloud ERP. So predominantly what I focus on is about how do we make our business processes better and more intelligent, whether it is directly embedding intelligence into the business processes or kind of developing it on our extension platform and making it available for customers and third-party partners as well. In this context, I also wrote a book for SAP and also run a podcast on the same. And thanks to be part of this. I'm excited to be part of this panel discussion today.
Thank you very much, Raghu. That was interesting, and I'm glad again that you joined in person. So next up, I'd like to invite Kavita Prasad. She is the General Manager at Parameter Protection at AWS. And Kavita, please feel free to also share some interesting use cases from an Intel perspective, which obviously you and I have been exposed to quite a bit. Welcome to the stage. Hi, Kavita, long time no see.
Thank you so much, Thomas, and thanks for the opportunity to be part of this summit. I really appreciate it. I recently moved to AWS, but prior to that, I've been working in the field of AI for almost 6 to 7 years right now, worked on AI in bringing AI technologies as part of a startup to the embedded edge market. How do you bring the intelligence to the edge solutions like robotics or autonomous systems or any of those edge applications? And after that, I was part of Intel, where I worked on the AI strategy and execution for all of Intel, taking a company like Intel to actually go up the stack and deploy AI solutions, where we recently launched a generative AI solution for one of the largest consulting groups. So have been living and breathing this field for quite some time. And as an engineer, I'm excited to be part of this journey at this stage, because AI is changing on a daily basis. And I'm so excited to be in this field and to be part of this panel as well, Thomas. Thanks.
Thank you, Kavita. Thank you very much. So last but not certainly least, I would like to invite Nestor Camilo. He is the Cloud Adoption Director at Oracle. Nestor, the stage is yours, and welcome to the conversation.
Hi, Thomas. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having the time to be in this very interesting panel. I've been with Oracle for the last 25 years. I started studying artificial intelligence in the 90s. So this was a long journey. I was working as an enterprise architect and managing the group of enterprise architects that takes problems from customer. Mostly I worked with a government institution, healthcare, tax, but also telcos and banks. Part of my job was identifying problems that they have and try to solve this with technology. Obviously, artificial intelligence was a small part a lot years ago. I started to do things with artificial intelligence with Oracle 20 years ago, when was very difficult to do. Probably most of you know what we're talking about. And now very excited about the new developments of generative AI. We just come from the big conference that we do every year, and there was some incredible announcement about what we are doing in the field of healthcare. Samples is the intelligent chatbot that can hear you and talk to you with a doctor and help to make your time more useful with the patient. You can interact more with the patient and ask the machine, please show me the last MRI or the last results or whatever makes sense for you. And instead of taking time for you to search it, that they get you this type of information. So very excited that this can be done for almost every industry. And we have probably in the start of this new journey. So very, very excited to be sharing ideas in the panel. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nestor. That's very insightful as well. So before we get into the questions, in my head, I was just sitting here and looking back of today's session so far, and we have invited many people who did students, hackers, developers who did a hackathon, which is like on this side of the spectrum. And then we had the venture capital community. And now we have the heavy hitters, the Fortune 500 corporations. You know, it's like the gamma is just gigantic. And I really like to have your insights, because speaking from experience, I really like to believe, and I like to say, the players in the industry who are the closest to the end customer, to the customer themselves, particularly the enterprise customers, are all of you together. And you are representing all the way from semiconductor to cloud service providers, as well as database and software companies. So we have the whole gamma, right? So we could probably talk about this for the next 3 days.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, let me ask the first question. So let's get right into some of these questions that we had already prepared. And we talked a little bit about large language models earlier. So large language models improved a lot in the general knowledge last year. But what happens when we try to use it for industry-specific use cases or fresh data? Because that's a really interesting question for the corporations and then for the customers that you have to serve. So I would like to ask Nestor first to open, the conversation, and then I would like everybody else to please chip in as well.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. Really, this is for me the big question that will start the next revolution. We all know that the LLMs are basically a parrot that can respond the next word based on some training. And there are very intelligent parrots, but really they don't have a context. They don't have fresh data. So for industry use case, we need to have access to data in our system, like the sample that I say for healthcare, but think about your inventory or think about anything about the customer. So for me, the next step on this is mixing, using the power of LLMs to understand better the problem, to have a very nice conversation, more human-like conversation, interaction, probably voice interactions. And but with this, have access to the internal system, probably enrich data with public data or whatever data that you have in your ecosystem, to have response that are adequate to the question. So with this in mind, I think that this year will appear a lot of use cases in the industry. We're seeing a lot, and probably we're just starting, because most of the people don't yet get the idea of what is really can be done and what is science fiction. No, we're not at the time that we can ask with the computer about everything and get perfect answer, less than act on that. But we're coming very near. If we define the use case, if we have the right data and we have the way to give the orders, we can do a lot. So for me, very exciting times to be in this field.
Who else would like to join?
I can echo. I completely echo with what Nestor is saying about these industry use cases, and how on these specific use cases, when we talk about how important it is to use this fresh data and how it makes sense. So now if we take it, when we talk about enterprise use cases, the main important thing here is that we have to make sure that we have to understand our customer, not only the customer, but also the customer's customer. When we talk about consumer-oriented use cases, the story is a little different. You're directly dealing with the customer's data. But when we are talking about enterprise use cases, we are talking about your customer and also the customer's customer. So here and now, when you are peeling the layer, now we are getting into the next phase of generative AI. Already with the AI-related use cases, you could see that there is a lot of buzz, a lot of hype around that. We wrote that hype. We have understood that you do not do AI for the sake of doing AI, but we have to understand the business benefits. What are the outcomes that you're creating for your customer and your customer's customer? Now, I take it one notch up. So for us, the way we are looking at it is that hey, if I pick up any particular line of business, whether it is procurement line of business or the sales line of business, how do I make the end user, my customer's customer, more productive? How can I make better sense out of the data that they are seeing it out? So in this context, it becomes even more important on understanding how these different large language models are working and how it can enhance a particular business process and cut down the hallucinations part of it. Because when we talk about the consumer oriented use cases, I think like the chat GPT and other things, obviously we have noticed that the hallucination part of it has increased in the last 6 months to 9 months. But now if you see, take it to the enterprise customers, we cannot get into this hallucination kind of a thing. So this is where it depends on how well you can adapt your data to the particular scenario. So this is where I think I definitely agree that interesting times, and this is going to stay here because there is a lot more we could do with this technology.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Dinesh, Jade?
Maybe I'll offer a different perspective. I think this year, next year, again from an LLM deployment standpoint, I basically look at it as a different layered problem. I would say the first layer is all about deployment. Can you successfully deploy it on any form factor of choice? And when I say form factor of choice, is I'm looking from an edge perspective, not running on the cloud, but on a consumer device that's very close, and can be personalized and used. So that kind of comes into, do you have the necessary architecture, necessary compute, necessary software, all the the desired jargon anyone uses to really make sure you can accomplish the task you're looking for. So that's the first thing. The next one is, I would say the second layer that kind of comes around it is, okay, fine, you've cornered the deployment one. How can you fine tune it? How can you make it task specific? You don't want to be very foundational in nature, because many of these foundational models, are jack of all trades. They're really not a master of anything, right? So this is where I think you put a lot more emphasis on making it task specific. And when you try to make it task specific, it really becomes important on, do you have the right amount of data to really make it much more appropriate for a specific task. The task could be productivity related, could be content creation related, could be consumption related, or anything else. That's where you're going to have a lot of challenge. But the issue becomes, it's just not fine tuning for a specific task. The question also becomes is, are you able to relate your output response to the emotional intelligence of the user? So this is where the question is, do you understand the user enough to be able to produce an information that you're able to correlate to what the user is asking for? What that means is, if I ask an intelligent bot, like a chat GPT, a specific question, or my 65-year-old mom asks the same question, it gets the same response. There's no big difference. It really makes a big difference if you're able to match your output prompt and the collateral that you're able to generate to understand the context and then provide to it. And I think we've not figured that portion out. And I think that needs to be figured out to really make that connection to the user. So you're able to get connected in a way that you have a much longer engaged conversation. So I think that's, I would say, give or take, a second layer of analysis. The third layer of analysis, okay, fine. Now you want to get into a commercial state. Here, you get into a lot of different sets of challenges. Here it's all about regulatory compliance. Is the outputs being generated, is it good? Is it bad? Is it meet a specific requirements of a specific geo? They might have constraints on that you should not be sharing this level of information, especially around conflicts. They want to be having a little bit tailored. And the question comes on, we have vector databases that kind of comes along with that. So it's, I think, a next level of complexity. I don't think also we have figured it out, how to really get it done. But again, a lot of activity on that front to get it done. So I would say, it's like a 3 to 4 layered problem, and a lot of bright minds on the research side, on the enterprise side, and also on the, I would say, many vendors who are actually looking at it, solving it collectively. And the year of 2024 should be an interesting year of deployment when you start, understanding these different layers of a problem and then solve it. At least my perspective. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Dinesh. For me, it's amazing. I've been in this industry now for over 30 years, and listening to all the different viewpoints, and the challenges that you have are very much different than what you have, for example, or anybody else. So with that, I'd like to give it over to JP. Being a giant, networking communication company, how do you see this?
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. And let me apologize because, as you noticed, instead of the 4 minutes of introduction, it was about 12 seconds because I had some issues, in terms of voice and video. So I didn't. Yeah, thank you. I didn't say too much, but just very quickly, we've been on this journey for 12 years, and we use ML AI for many things for the internet. Security, it's all about machine learning AI in security. We're using that heavily. Collaboration as well, like noise cancellation and all these things. And on the networking side, we've been using that for anomaly detection, for optimization of different parameters and all these things. Now, what I'd like to say, I may be the optimistic guy around the table, and sorry about that, but here's what I would say. One, I've never seen such a pace of innovation in my entire life. And I've been, like you, Thomas, in this industry for 30 years. So the big question is why? And I think that there are still multiple aspects that are very unique to this LLM, such as the emerging properties. And every week we discover how we could use machine learning LLM, for a different use case. It's also due to the fact, I believe, that we do understand, of course, very well the architecture of the large language models, but we don't really understand, how we come up with a given outcome. And from time to time, we start to believe that maybe we can use LLM for general pattern matching engine for all these kind of things. So I think we'll continue to discover new things. Second is that open innovation is there. And again, I don't think we've seen such an amount of energy. And that's great. And of course, the users, they keep adopting it. So when we talk to our customers, they have a lot of imagination. Believe me, they always come up with new ways, new use cases. Nestor was mentioning about access to fresh data. I do believe personally that there are still a lot of challenges, but they are going to be solved extremely quickly. The access of fresh data, we know that we have new mechanism now for bigger prompt, access to live data, access to APIs with new agents and other things. And when I see the energy across all companies, I do believe that all of these challenges will be solved very quickly. And we're going to see a snowball effect in terms of innovation. That's really what I believe. Of course, we need to be very careful about being responsible and all these things. What I'm hoping, to be honest, is that as human, we're not going to be too dumb at some point, because if you keep relying on these kind of things to do things for you, you stop thinking at some point. So this is one danger. The last one, and I'll let Kavita speak. We haven't been very gallant. Kavita, my apologies. You should be the first to talk, but you know what? It's reliability. And I think that's the biggest concern. We don't know yet how to measure the quality of the outcome. It could be a very long tail before we can achieve that goal. And that is, a serious issue, I believe. But again, we have a lot of energy around the table to solve that. Kavita, I think the floor is yours now, if I'm not mistaken. Thomas?
Absolutely, Kavita. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I think most of you already covered what I had to say. For me, the way I look at it is there are two aspects. One is the training and one is the deployment. Today, we are focused on a lot of training these large-scale models. But when you come to deployment, you really need to think about customer business outcomes first from a customer perspective. And having said that, the enterprise, 80% of the data is still behind these secure walls of the enterprises. It's not publicly available out there, nor do the customers want to make sure, they want to make sure they protect their data and want to be able to deploy these solutions within their security perimeters. So the solutions that the industry needs to come up with needs to work in a secure way behind the security perimeters of the customers for us to meaningfully deploy these solutions. And to earlier point, yes, these solutions can be deployed on the edge, they can be deployed on the cloud, they can be deployed on in the mobile devices if needed. Now, how do you make sure that you're deploying it seamlessly and the tool chain works seamlessly for the deployment is another key thing to keep in mind. And having said that, I strongly believe that models are a means to an end. Yes, a lot of us talk about models. Models are means to an end, but not the end, because not only do you need to rely on these large scale models, but for all the domains, you don't really need these large scale models if I'm trying to solve a domain specific problem. So you need to have domain specific models that are fine tuned, that needs to work with other logic like potentially probabilistic methods or your search engines, or it needs to combine with a different set of legacy knowledge to actually build an application that can be deployed. So now, if from a business perspective, you need to think at it holistically. So you're designing the architecture to go meet your business outcomes. Otherwise, we'll have one or two bespoke use cases, but transforming the industry for generative AI or for AI in general needs to start with business outcomes, work down the stack, and make sure you're getting it right at the infrastructure layer, at the data layer, at the model layer, and at the application layer. So it's a lot of things that need to come together to make it successful, and that's where the journey is going to be.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your responses. Let me go to the next question, but I want to spin it a little bit different than what we had initially defined. And the reason is the majority of the audience here is most likely the developer community. I don't think we have a ton of other Fortune 500 companies listening to this summit, because it's more about Web3 and the hackathon and how it relates to AI. But let me ask the question with a slightly different spin. So with all the hype around generative AI, a lot of investments, and we heard this before from the investment session, is going around across the spectrum. Now, is this going to be another hype and bust, or is that something that will sustain and pick up more authenticity? Now, how are the enterprises, and that's the spin right now that I want to throw in here, going to look at this in the short term and the long term? And we decided to look a little bit into some use cases, but I actually like to hear it from a different angle, and that is, you are representing really big corporations. And it would be interesting to hear to the audience, what kind of AI are you working on internally, not just relying on others to train the models? And most importantly, looking at the labor market, what kind of interesting developer expertise would you seek for a young person who is listening, who is either a startup company, who is trying to figure out what are these 5 big companies looking for? I saw recently in the news, or regularly, like Amazon recently, they're literally picking up, AI startup companies. They're barely 8 months old. Right. And they're paying a few million, so they're picking up. I don't think it's the startup itself, it's the brains of the people that comes with it. So if you can add maybe to, what are you looking for? What are you developing? And for the listeners, what kind of the education or startups are you interested to actually, bring in-house or work with as a partnership? Anybody wants to start?
Sure. So maybe I can.
Yeah, let him start.
Go ahead. I tried to be quick, Thomas, because you are asking a fundamental question. And to be honest, this is a very hard one as well. I have a son, he's 18, he's studying computer science at EPFL in Switzerland. And to be honest with you, a few years ago, I would have said, look, start with data science. Now I'm like, oh, wow, what does that mean, data science in a few years, when you start to have so many tools that can automate, many of these tasks. And nobody can tell you what it will be, for a young guy who is starting now, what are we going to need in 5 years down the road is extremely hard to tell. What I would say is, be a very strong generalist, and don't underestimate, how important the math and statistics areas are, and try to understand as many technologies as possible without specializing too quickly. That's what I would say.
I have to tell you, I am surprised to hear that. And yes, it makes total sense. I had the same question recently. I had a presentation last week with the same question, and the answer was more, well, it's somebody who needs to know how to develop, Python and knows TensorFlow. But I think your answer is actually much more on the money, that you need to be a generalist about mathematics and physics and stuff, because everything else will build around it. So I really like that answer. So thank you very much. Anybody else?
Just to add on to that, I think that's a great introduction that you have provided to this answer, JP. I would say yes, math and science, I think you will get a lot more focus on math and science again, because the thing is, like, when we are talking about the latest buzz, the generative AI, it's gonna stay. It's not like the other, maybe in the last 20, 25 years, we have seen this many times, and a couple of times we have seen that we did understand that when we had the browser war game, or whether we had the iPhone moment, we know that the first thing what has happened is that we had the basic technology out, and then we have built on top of these applications. Now with the generative AI space, obviously what's going to happen is that we are going to focus on how you can build on top of that. So obviously math and physics are going to be very key, but adding the generalistic option on top of that, and if you cut across the different domains or different industries, I would advise, or I would suggest to the newer community, right, the new generation, that you need to look about the application aspect of this technology, how you can use these applications, and how you can make, we keep talking about AGI and ASI and other things. It's going to be a bit farther out there when you are trying to marry the robotics part and the AI part, when it's far-flung in the future. But in the next few, maybe in the next decade or so, the focus will be more on how I can increase the productivity, and how a person using AI-assisted tools or AI-assisted services can deliver better. This is where I tell to my kids, like, when ChatGPT was released, obviously you cannot control kids or not to use it. So obviously I say that, hey, it is okay to use the technology, but try to understand the approach that was provided. So do not focus just on the outcome, but understand how you are reaching the outcome. That is where your creative mind or creative thinking should come into play.
I like that addition to the previous comment, and I really hope for the audience that this is somewhat helpful and you're picking up, valuable information. But, over to Nestor on the Oracle side. How does a giant database company look at this?
Yeah, well, before I start with Oracle, just the formation thing, I just talked with a friend a few weeks ago that is a university in the public University of Buenos Aires, that was one of the largest in Latin America. And they say that they are seeing a lot of people going to study physics. And when here, what is happening? And this is really because the training after physics, you can learn to work with a lot of data, understand the methodology, understand how to work to solve difficult parts. And this and data science are the two more popular careers that are happening in the University of Buenos Aires. So I think that makes a lot of sense to have a good foundation to understand the thing and differ between what is science fiction and need to have a lot of things, and what is can be done in the future, in the near future. Coming back now to Oracle, we see that we need to write a lot of new application to take advantage of these capabilities, and we have a lot of application. We have vertical application, we have horizontal application, we have the technology, etc. So the first thing that we are doing is to put a lot of effort in generation of code, but not generating thousands of lines of code, because the hallucination problem that everybody knows make that you as a programmer need to read, imagine if you need to read thousands of lines of code to discover that is something hallucination. So generating application through low code or no code. This is one of our big bets on this. We have done this for a lot of years, but we're in the mood now to generate applications that don't require code. And this is mostly configuration on some models, and to work directly with a database. We just announced this. Your work select IA chat, give me the information from my top customer that do that and do that and do that. And the model can create the SQL necessary to work with the database, get you the information. And imagine if you say with this, write me the application that give me this number thing. Really is near, not a long future. We have working prototype with this. The second thing is that we need to work with a lot of data internally. And as Kavita said, most of the information are private information and need to continue to be private information. I don't want the healthcare information be or the tax information or whatever information you think that's for a private company be in the hands of people that don't need to have the access. So working with vector database is another big point in the industry. We just announced to have vector database embedded in our database. So you can do a select that not just do a regular SQL or something about special data, but also with information that is part of a generative question, like give me books similar to what I have read, but that are in stock and are in English and for less than $10. And imagine that this can be solved in just one query. So if we can solve this, we can put on top of this new application that are very easy to be created. So this is the part that we are working in Oracle, putting artificial intelligence in our application, creating a platform to make it more easy, to more service that are already trained, and obviously all the infrastructure to train these big models. But these are what we are going on.
Thank you very much, Nestor. Kavita.
The way I look at it from an enterprise perspective is there are two kinds of business use cases, right? One is the foundational use cases. These are your chatbots or queries or searches. Those are table stakes. If companies don't invest in that, they're going to be left behind because it is going to be automated, like it or not. But then there's a second class of workloads, which are like transformational use cases. Say, for example, can I combine multiple domains to create a unique design? For example, can I combine physics with chemistry and to create a new design in a fashion industry, say, for example, or where you are creating this multiple domains to create unique solutions that can transform your business, for example, and either create new avenues of business or new avenues of revenue is going to be very, very critical. And that's where the companies are going to focus on. One is foundational cases. You need to invest so you are not left behind. Transformational use cases that is specific to your industry that's actually going to put you on a winning path. But having said that, also the industry is going to focus because how do you define accuracy? How do you define whether the answer is right or wrong? Is human in the loop always going to need to be there? That's where the focus is going to be on explainability, reliability, sustainability, because developing solutions is easy, but you also need to keep in mind the cost of deploying these solutions. So what does it cost to deploy my solutions? How do I make sure it is sustainable, both from the environment perspective, but also from an economical perspective? Is it sustainable? How do I explain the results I got? When do I need a human in the loop? When don't I need a human in the loop? All these things need to be taken care of for you to stand behind the solutions you're putting out together. And that's where a lot of focus is going to be.
Thank you. You're absolutely correct, particularly when it comes to trust, data privacy, and the visibility, what's within the models and what comes out of it. As you mentioned earlier, focus on the edge, IoT, and end user use cases. At the same time, you are a semiconductor company. If I am a startup, if I am a student at the university, or I want to decide what I would like to study in STEM, for example, what's your opinion on this? What do you need?
I'll probably start from a very from my personal experience. I think give or take about 20 years ago, when I started my professional career at Jet Proportional Labs. My very first job was my manager prints out big charts which was taken from airplanes more than 50,000 feet high. Print out, and I was asked to classify what those objects meant from a top-down view of an airplane, right? And it's like, okay. So I said, fine, this is an awesome job, and I started to do it. And that was my first intuition into computer vision, right? 20 years ago, there was no AI, right?
Yep.
So I had to use magnifying glasses and then try to understand what those objects actually meant. Draw boxes around it and say, these are trees, these are buildings, these are some military installations, those kind of things. But it took about 48 to 72 hours every time I get a chart. And it was really painful. So go ask my chain of command is, how do I automate it? How do I make it simple enough so that this can be much more, fun and faster, right? So I said, okay, figure it out. I said, okay, fine. Now I have a problem statement. What do I do? So the question really comes is, I would tell any common developer startup companies is, you got to look at what problem you're really trying to solve, right? And do you have your strength in fundamentals? The fundamentals could be, basic programming skills, understanding physics, understanding math, understanding biology. In this case, I knew basic Pascal. I used to do C, C++ those days. But okay, let me write a program. And I knew I was bad in biology, to be honest, but at least I knew, the shape of this meant in actually a tree kind of stuff, right? So a fusion of my basic programming skills with biology translated into writing a program. So instead of taking a huge, a 10 feet by 10 feet printout, put this into an old PC, and then started to, analyze, regions of interest. That really solved the problem. We were able to get all this analysis completed in 6 months. Again, it was a fusion of simple things to get things done. And as things started to evolve, right, then we started to move towards more, I would say, consumer-oriented products. Consumer-oriented products was now, we're getting into smartphones. I don't know if people are familiar, in the year 2000, when I think it was called Droid, I think, or Motorola Droid phones, if I remember correct. They started to come out, they started taking a lot of pictures. The pictures here was all about, how do I make the pictures a little bit more cleaner? How do I improve on quality? Now, the subject of quality at those days was very, very difficult. What was good for me was bad for my friend. So it was very difficult to really quantify how to get things done. Again, you have a problem statement. The question becomes is, okay, fine, you don't know what the solution is, but can you question what needs to get done? So we kind of put a very simple algorithm. The algorithm was, if you're not able to see spatial details at this, luminescence, then classify it as a bad. Again, it's a simple problem. Again, access to statistics, because we're able to take histogram of all the pixels, and based off the histogram distribution, we classify it as a bad or good. Again, it was a fusion of statistics and programming to solve the problem. So again, I would kind of emphasize the fact is have a good perspective and depth into some of the fundamental subjects that you learn in school, because I think you're going to use it more often than you think that is necessarily important for you. And once you have that, start questioning the underlying assumptions. because somebody says it to you doesn't mean it's true. You got to understand if that is true. If it is not, dig into it. And if there's a better way to do it, awesome, get it done, right? There's no set rule that it has to be done a certain way. And I think if you start getting into that mentality, you'll find AI to become much more interesting, because I personally believe AI today still doesn't have common sense, right? Because it does what it's asked to do, because it's been trained like that to do certain things.
Yeah.
Right. So if you really want to get common sense into AI, it needs to understand contextual information and knowledge representation of complex things. And we're not there yet. So I think, for developers and for new students working in startups, I think that's the next big thing. And if you're able to solve that, I think, you become a unicorn.
So, wow, I'm sitting here. It's like, I knew it before. We can sit here for another 3 days and discuss the topics of AI and everything that you brought up in the variety of viewpoints here. I would say I have one more question, and I give everybody maybe just a minute to address this. And I'm just picking something because I'm just picking up two words here that are sticking out to me, and that is trust and validation. Trust and validation, I think, is very, very important, particularly in the area of AI. And just very quickly, within a minute for each, what are you guys going to do in your company to address this issue of trust and validation?
Sure.
We'll go first.
Yeah, I can go first. So yeah, this is a very important aspect, right? Currently, we are in this kind of a race where there are a lot of large language models coming out there, and each of them provide different kinds of outcomes when you feed data into that. But since we are coming from the enterprise standpoint, we have to focus more on how is this information going to be used by the customer and the customer's customer. This is where, am I really going to solve the customer's problem, or am I creating more problems for them? So this is where trust and validity are going to play a big role. So this is where we are trying to put a lot of emphasis on the models that we train and the data that we use. And when we create the models and when we put additional data on top of that, and then obviously when we are implementing at the customer side, you have to make sure that this data is rightfully used. So you have to make sure that for one particular problem, you might be using a particular large language model, but then for a different problem, I think we might have to switch over to a different large language model. I think irrespective of the large language model that you use, the main important factor is that how can I use this data, and to improve the trust and validity of the outcomes, you have to focus on what kind of data sets that you're putting in here. Are these data sets having enough ethical values? Are you removing the bias from the data that you have? So on and so forth.
So yeah, let me just, before I go to the next person,
Right.
I want to pick up on that.
Right.
And I want to challenge everybody else in this group.
Right.
And that is, everybody now is talking about ChatGPT, right? And everybody is looking at OpenAI.
Mm-hmm.
And at least on the consumer side, like the B2B2C, so it's on the C side,
Mm-hmm.
where everybody's looking at data security and accuracy and everybody's pointing at OpenAI. But when you go to an enterprise customer, you cannot rely on OpenAI to do the job. You have internal specific developers who are customizing for your enterprise customers, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That is where we have, I think many of the companies, not only SAP, many of the companies, they're going to build additional foundational layers on top of that, which will help validate this scenario and provide better outcomes.
And is that, and I know I gave everybody just a minute, but now I'm so off this train right now. Are you doing that and you have to do it internally because the enterprise customers are demanding it? Or is there also an opportunity for open source? But I'm just opening a door that I don't even want to go. We have no time. But go ahead. Maybe you can address it as well, including open source.
You're getting into dangerous waters.
Right. I know.
Right. So I think the very first thing is IP protection. That's the biggest problem, right? And I'm pretty sure everyone has heard a lot of news and collateral that a lot of employees from enterprise companies have been starting to use ChatGPT for code optimization. or for RTL verification of designs. That is that's a no-go. So I would say the constraints internally are much more stringent, much more stronger, and there are going to be a lot of areas where internal assets are going to be much more foundationally developed to make sure you don't use them for open source kind of development. Now, again, there are going to be contributions to open source, don't get me wrong, that will always happen. But for internal IP development, you're not going to be using open source vendors.
Yeah.
It might be a good foundation, but you're going to build on top of it.
Yeah. People online, happy to chip in, and we are running a little bit tight on time. We want to allow some people to ask some questions, but quickly, if anybody wants to add to this.
Yeah, maybe I'll be very quick, Thomas. So here is what I would say. One is you need to have a metric to assess the efficacy of the system. If you look at LLM, we have many metrics like the MMLU, the Bleu score, Rouge score, that have been designed for efficacy of a translation, for summarization, these things. But because we ship solutions, for example, for our customers, we need to have a way to assess the efficacy of the entire system. So for example, if you're developing a system to do troubleshooting of network issues, you need to have a way to do that. Internally at Cisco, I can tell you we are following a very strict scientific approach so that we can assess the efficacy. And when you have the machine learning AI engineers, they love the cross entropy and all these things, but that's not what customers care about. They care about the global efficacy, and this is the hardest thing to do. On trust, very quickly, it depends what you do with the use case, right? With some use case, you may want some time to do closed-loop control. Like, what does that mean? Suppose that you want to have a network that can detect issues and fix the issue automatically, and without a human in the loop. We have customers who say that. They say, look, if you can identify the issue, do you have a way to fix it without a human in the loop? When you start to do that, you need to have the highest level of trust. And the approach that I took for one of my products, for example, was to say, I'm going to show you the efficacy of the system. When you trust it, you have the way to specifically say to the engine, hey, I see what you can do in terms of efficacy of predicting issues. Next time you predict, you close the loop and you provide a policy. Just these two comments.
Okay, thank you. Kavita and or Nestor.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Go you.
No, go ahead, Nestor.
Okay. First, and I will take some Kavita words. Having the model explain what they are doing, for me, is the way to go. We are very, it's a long time to give that. But for example, in the traditional artificial intelligence world, machine learning, we already have in this space. We can do now, or in our cases, we can get the information that we ask to a model and the explicability of why these are the results. So this is something that can be solved for me in the enterprise. Probably the part of the large language models will be more to understand more what the customer is asking, or to help to create the answer to the question. But in most cases, they will be talking with other models. And we have already the explainability part solved. So for me, this is one of the points. The second point, what we are doing to don't mix the private data with the large language model really is critical for enterprise. The way that we are doing at Oracle, we have an alliance with Cohere, that a very large language model that was most created for doing enterprise class of use cases. We host their model in private for customer. So if the customer want to do fine-tuning or extend the learning, they can do for their own, with their own data, and we don't have access to them. Cohere don't have access to them. So this is the way that we protect the information of the customer. And I think that this is the best way to solve it. And probably as Cohere can be another provider, but probably you want to have your own copy and extend it in your own facilities. Because if not, you have the risk that you end training the OpenAI model with proprietary data, and nobody wants to go in this direction.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Kavita, last but not least.
Yeah, no, completely agree with all the comments on the panel. The key thing is we can't use these open source models just the way they are. Everybody needs to take it and fine tune it to their own data. That is the key. That's where you are increasing the trust in the outputs. And to Nestor's earlier point, yes, in predictive mechanisms, we already know how to measure the trust factor, right? You have confusion matrix, you have F1 scores, et cetera, et cetera. But for generative AI, it's still now making sure how consistently you're getting the same answer is how we are testing it. But there are going to be methods that are going to be figured out on how you increase the explainability, how you increase the accuracy score, so that you know there is trust in that. So it's an evolving field. We are too early in the early stages of generative AI. It's an exciting field to be in. Things are going to evolve, and pretty soon we'll have to see how soon it is that human in the loop needs to be there or does not need to be there to make these decisions more, you can trust on these things. And that's where the future lies.
I agree. Thank you. And quickly we're running a little bit late on time, but maybe 2 top questions, Sonia, that you have for us from the queue.
Sure. Yeah, we do have a couple that are relevant. So in terms of the how cloud adoption aligns with data governance and data management practices in your organization, what are the main, as far as how does data governance and data management align with those practices to ensure data privacy and security breaches are in compliance with your org?
Does somebody want to pick it up quickly?
Yeah, I can take it.
Okay, go ahead.
First, imagine the most confidential data in the world. Yeah, probably military, government, high security data. The way that we solve it is that we create a cloud that is identical to our public cloud, but between their closed words of Department of Defense or whatever. The next second one is customers that need to have data, but not a full cloud inside their data center. We can do that, and this is something that can be done. But this don't mean that cloud are not secure. In most of the cases that I know, our cloud are more secure than most of our customers' actual data centers. So for me, it's not cloud or not cloud. Really, there's some use case that need to have a lot of wall between, and there is some data that need to be in a country, and these are some restrictions. But for me, most of the problem aren't really if they are in cloud or not. Is the company do the right procedure to ensure security? Because if you have a very big door, but you get the keys in front, the door don't happen to be a stopper, really. That for me, this is mostly the way that the customer use it, that really the technology. Today, the technology is perfectly secure to have the data in cloud without problem.
Okay, thank you. And I have the gentleman sitting next to me nodding, so I think you guys are all pretty much in agreement on that one. Sonia, maybe one more question, otherwise we skip, depending on the time.
Yeah, I think we're going to skip, Thomas. We'll save the questions for tomorrow that are more relevant to the topics then. Yeah.
Okay, all righty. Then with that, online we have and still have Nestor, and we have JP. Here I have Vinesh and Raghu. I thank you very, very much. I appreciate you coming to the studio in person, so I'm not alone here. Thank you very much. And I would like to invite Habeck to the stage. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.